Richard Childress confirms that Tyler Reddick will be back at Richard Childress Racing in 2023. Kyle Larson is showing interest in potentially racing in the 24 Hours Le Mans next year, and it looks like there will be a double yellow line rule for Atlanta Motor Speedway. What's going on, guys? It's Daniel, and welcome back to another video. We've got a ton of NASCAR and other motorsports stories discussed here today on the channel. Let's go ahead and just jump straight into those really quickly. We're going to start off with paint schemes and sponsorship news first. Let's go ahead and just jump straight into those really quickly. First paint scheme we're taking a look at is Kyle C's 2022 A-Game scheme that we're going to see, I believe, this weekend at Atlanta Motor Speedway. This paint scheme's all right, in my opinion. It's not my favorite paint scheme I've seen so far, but I do think it's really awesome. The A-Game is coming in and stepping up to play and sponsoring this weekend. The next paint scheme we're taking a look at is Chase Elliott's 2022 Kelley Blue Book scheme that we're going to see for 2 races here at Watkins Glen. I believe another race later this year as well. This paint scheme's all right, in my opinion. It's really cool to see the Kelley Blue Book is going to continue to sponsor Chase Elliott into the 2022 season. The next paint scheme we're taking a look at is BJ McLeod's 2020 Celsius Energy scheme that we are going to see this weekend here at Atlanta Motor Speedway. I think this paint scheme is really cool. It's also cool to see that Celsius is continuing to partner up and work on multi teams heading season. I think that's really awesome. The paint scheme looks pretty cool in my opinion. The next paint scheme we're taking a look at is Brendan Poole's 2022 LiftForKidsLess.com scheme that we're going to see this weekend in the Truck Series race at Atlanta Motor Speedway. This paint scheme is really cool in my opinion. Really cool to see Lift for Kids Less is stepping up and continuing their sponsorship with the Glory to God Racing team. The next paint scheme we're taking a look at is Timmy Hill's 2020 Units scheme that we're going to see this weekend at Atlanta Motor Speedway. Really cool to see the Units is continuing their partnership up with Timmy Hill. They, of course, will be sponsoring Timmy Hill for multiple race season. Also, the Units is continuing to partner up with Timmy Hill. The next paint scheme we're taking a look at is Mason Massey's 2022 Anderson Power Services scheme that we'll see this weekend at Atlanta Motor Speedway. This paint scheme is really cool in my opinion. Really cool to see that Anderson Power Services is going to continue working with Mason Massey. And it's cool to see that Mason Massey is getting more starts with this team here in 2022. The next paint scheme we're taking a look at is Kyle Busch's 2022 Safe Light Alternate scheme, which is going to be a white scheme that we're going to see at Circuit of the Americas. I am not a big fan of this paint scheme, to be honest with you. The paint scheme does not look really good. I think black works a lot better on this truck than white. It just looks a little bit ugly in my opinion, but it's cool that they are changing up, though, at COTA. The next paint scheme we're taking a look at is Dylan Bassett's 2022 Honest Amish scheme that we're going to see this weekend at Atlanta Motor Speedway. Now, Dylan Bassett will have to qualify his way into the race, but I will say it's pretty cool that Honest Amish is coming in and sponsoring him. It's really cool to see the new sponsors working with the team, and hopefully they will be able to qualify their way in at Atlanta Motor Speedway. Dylan Bassett has some good talent. The next paint scheme we're taking a look at is J.G. Lee's 2020 Work Pro Tool scheme that we're going to see in 7 or 8 races this season. This paint scheme is all right in my opinion, but I do think it generally is really awesome that Work Pro Tools is going to be coming in and sponsoring the team. Really excited to see that, and good to see that they're working with J.J. Gailey. The next paint scheme we're taking a look at is Corey LaJoie's 2022 FOE scheme and Fraternal Eagle scheme that we are going to see this weekend here at Atlanta Motor Speedway. I love this paint scheme. It looks really good. The number's in a good position. Also cool to see the FOE is working with another driver that is not Justin Haley. That's pretty exciting, and good to see the FOE is coming in and sponsoring the team this weekend, to be honest with you. The next paint scheme we're taking a look at is Austin Dillon's 2020 Carolina Cowboys scheme that we're going to see in multiple races this season. Pretty awesome, in my opinion. The paint scheme, I think, actually looks really cool. It's really interesting because you would actually think Austin Dillon would be associated with something like this. So it's not a major surprise to me, but I think it's really awesome that they're stepping up and sponsoring him this weekend. The next paint scheme we're taking a look at is Jeremy Clement's 2020 Fly Inform scheme, which is an updated scheme that we're seeing, I believe, this weekend at Atlanta Motor Speedway. I've always been a fan of Jeremy Clement's Fly Inform schemes. This one's no exception. They did a good job on it, and I'm looking forward to seeing on the racetrack this weekend at Atlanta Motor Speedway. The next paint scheme we're taking a look at is Ty Dillon's 2022 Alsco uniform scheme that we're seeing this weekend at Atlanta Motor Speedway. I love that they keep changing up Ty Dillon's paint schemes, and I think they did a really good job on this. The green works really well, and I think did a good job on this paint scheme. The next paint scheme we're taking a look at is Bubba Wallace and Kurt Busch's 2022 Embrace Home Loan schemes. There we're going to see combined 9 races for 23XI Racing this season. They have a 9-race partnership with the team. First of all, very awesome that they are 23XI continues to get sponsorships. Another thing that's really awesome is these paint schemes. I think they look really good. I love the different look for both of the numbers. I think they did a good job on it, and I'm looking forward to seeing on the racetrack in 2022. The next paint scheme we're taking a look at is Greg Biffle's 2020 Stillman College scheme that we're going to see this weekend at Atlanta Motor Speedway. I love this paint scheme. I love it. They keep changing it for NY Racing. I love it. They're representing colleges. I think that's really, really awesome. And it's awesome also to see that Greg Biffle is going to be back behind the wheel this weekend with the team. The next paint scheme we're taking a look at is Ryan Blaney's 2022 body armor scheme that we're seeing debut at Atlanta Motor Speedway. I've always been a big fan of Ryan Blaney's body armor schemes. This one is no exception. They did a great job on it, and I'm very excited to see this paint scheme out on the racetrack at Atlanta Motor Speedway. The next paint scheme we're taking a look at is Tommy Joe Martin's 2022 Regiment scheme that we're seeing this weekend at Atlanta Motor Speedway. Awesome paint scheme, in my opinion. I think did a really, really good job on it, and it's cool to see that Alpha Prime continues to change up their paint schemes. The next paint scheme we're taking a look at is Jesse Wuji's 2022 EPM scheme that we're going to see this weekend at Atlanta Motor Speedway. It's unclear if he'll qualify in the car this weekend, but they're going to be very tight on owner's points, and with the potential qualifying being canceled, we may not see his car on the racetrack, but I think paint scheme looks really, really cool, and I think did a pretty decent job on this paint scheme. The next paint scheme we're taking a look at is Austin Cindric's 2022 Knauf Menard scheme that we are going to see this weekend here at Atlanta Motor Speedway. Very solid paint scheme, in my opinion. I think did a pretty good job on it, and I'm excited to see this paint scheme out on the racetrack here at Atlanta Motor Speedway. The next paint scheme we're taking a look at is Jeff Burton's 2020 International Championship Boxing scheme that we're seeing at Atlanta Motor Speedway. Very awesome to see International Champion Boxing is stepping up and sponsoring him this season. Pretty cool. Excited to see his paint scheme in 2022. The next paint scheme we're taking a look at is Hailie Deegan's 2020 Waist Equip scheme that we are going to see this weekend here at Atlanta Motor Speedway. First of all, very excited to see the Waist Equip is sponsoring Hailie Deegan. Second thing, I think the paint scheme looks really, really good. They did a great job on it, and I'm looking forward to see it on the racetrack this weekend here at Atlanta Motor Speedway. The next paint scheme we're taking a look at is Josh Williams' 2022 Cool Race scheme that we're seeing this weekend here at Atlanta Motor Speedway. Awesome, the Cool Race coming in and working with Josh Williams. Pretty awesome. Happy to see that they're working with Josh Williams this weekend. The next paint scheme we're taking a look at is Jeff Burton's 2022 Rocky Boots scheme that we'll see here in 2022. Very excited to see Rocky Boots is coming in and sponsoring Jeff Burton, and good to see that our Motorsports is getting new partnerships as well. The next paint scheme we're taking a look at is Anthony Alfredo's 2020 Digital Ally scheme that we are going to see here this weekend at Atlanta Motor Speedway. Very solid scheme. Very exciting to see that Anthony Alfredo has another sponsorship of the season instead of Dew Wipes. Pretty cool, and cool to see the Digital Ally is going to be sponsoring Anthony Alfredo this weekend. And the final paint scheme we are taking a look at is Ty Majeski's 2022 Wheel Pro scheme that we are going to see this weekend here at Atlanta Motor Speedway. I think it's very, very awesome. I think did a really awesome and a great job on it. And I'm very excited to see the Wheel Pros is going to be coming in and stepping up to the plate and sponsoring this weekend at Atlanta Motor Speedway. And now we're going to jump on to the next story of today's episode, as we're going to talk about the Atlanta purse money for this weekend. So, for the Cup Series, including with all the charter money, how the charter bonuses work and stuff, it will be $8 million, $263,045, of course, with all the charter money that has to go out. For the NASCAR Xfinity Series race, it'll be $1,232,553. And for the Truck Series, it's going to be $669,442. Pretty good purses, in my opinion. I wish the Xfinity would have a little bit more money, since the Xfinity Series has seemed to get a lot more money in their series, especially with higher car counts. You probably would like to see that upgraded. But overall, I think the purses look really, really cool. Really, really sick. And overall, like I said, I think it's pretty awesome to see that is the purse money. I think that's really, really awesome, to be honest with you. And now we're going to jump on to the next story of today's episode, as we are talking real quick about Denny Hammond. Now, Denny Hammond was actually responding to the Jeff Gluck poll about the trash compound. He actually was criticizing the traction compound at Phoenix Raceway. And he says that it made Phoenix a one-lane groove track. He said Phoenix is better than that when it is not a freight train around the top. I entirely agree with Denny Hammond. I'll personally say this. I am not a big fan of traction compound. Yes, I think certain tracks it works out. Nashville put on a really good show with the Reddick compound. I think the Xfinity Series race in Michigan was actually pretty decent. I think Pocono works really, really well. New Hampshire works well. And in Bristol, of course, the PJ1 works very, very well. But there are a lot of tracks, especially like Phoenix, where we do not need trash compound. I think besides maybe besides Bristol and Nashville, we don't need trash compound anywhere else. I think we need to see how the car can actually race without the trash compound. So overall, in my opinion, I'm not a big fan of the traction compound, and I think it's one thing that long-term needs to go away, in my honest opinion. And now we're going to jump on to the next story of today's episode, as we're going to talk about F1. As it was reported by Adam Stern on Tuesday or Wednesday that ESPN will continue with commercial-free coverage of F1 this year with Mother's Polish this season. I think this is really, really awesome that F1 is continuing to work and have commercial-free races. And that's one thing about NASCAR I like to see. Now, of course, I think F1 ESPN have to pay a hefty tone if they do want to have commercial-free races. But this is something that I've been saying. F1 puts on a much better broadcast than I think NASCAR puts on. And yes, it seems like when F1 IndyCar 10, especially during green flag, and even during caution and red flags, they never turn the camera off except during the pre-race. They only go to commercials during that. When they have the race on and stuff, especially during like caution and stuff, they keep it on throughout. So that's one thing I definitely would like to see change overall. And I do hope that is something that does change here in the near future, because I think it needs to happen where we need to see commercial-free races throughout season. That's something and I'm not a big fan of, is the fact that there are no commercial-free races for Cup. That's something that does need to change, and that's one thing I do overall like about Formula One. And now we're going to jump on to the next story of today's episode, as we're talking about All-Star qualifying. Now, there's been a lot of conversation about what All-Star qualifying is going to look like for this year. Well, for the first time since I think 2019, All-Star qualifying is going back to traditional form, where pit stops are going to return during qualifying, where you'll have the 3 laps that they used to at Charlotte. There will be pit stops basically returning, where, like I just said, you will be able to do 3 laps, and you'll have to have a mandatory pit stop. I always love that about All-Star qualifying, to see how tough these guys can be coming down pit road. We've seen some incredible slides and saves, some incredible times come out of pit road as well. And it'll be a good test to see how much faster the times can be than they used to, because, of course, now you have single lineups on the car. I think that's something that's really, really awesome and really, really cool. And, again, very exciting to see that that is returning here in 2022. And now we're going to jump on to the next story of today's episode, as we're talking about Taylor Gray. Now, Taylor Gray was being interviewed by a friend of mine on YouTube, Casey Campbell, and he says that his first Truck Series race for this year is going to be at Circuit of the Americas. Taylor Gray is expected to run a part-time schedule this year, since he is not 18 years old yet. I believe he turns 18 next year. He's, I think, 16 currently or 17 at the moment. Taylor Gray's first truck race in Dakota. He's going to run 7 or 8 races this year, very similar to last year's schedule. I believe this is supposed to be around the time he was supposed to make his debut last year before he got involved in that motorcycling accident. Now, Taylor Gray has had a really good start to the ARCA season. He will also, of course, be competing in Pensacola this weekend, but he's had a couple decent runs in the Truck Series, and of course picked up his first career official ARCA victory. Yes, he's a very aggressive driver, but the guy knows how to get it done, and overall I'm very excited to see that he's getting back behind the wheel. He'll be racing at COTA, and then next week, I think that's really awesome, really, really sick, really, really cool, and I'm excited to see what he can do here at COTA next weekend. And now we're going to jump on to the next story of today's episode, as we're talking about Spencer Boyd. As it was announced yesterday that Spencer Boyd has been cleared to race in the Truck Series this weekend at Atlanta Motor Speedway. This is really, really good news. Of course, Spencer Boyd expected to be cleared, able to be cleared to get back in, because of the fact he dislocated his shoulder at Las Vegas a couple weeks ago. Now, they did have a 1-week break where he's able to rest, and he was examined, and he's able to get back behind the wheel. Now, hopefully, he won't get involved in any really bad runs so he can get really seriously injured. That's one thing I'm not hoping that ends up happening to him. So, I'm happy to see Spencer Boyd is officially cleared to come back behind the wheel. NASCAR really made one of the worst calls I think they've ever made. So, I think it's cool to see he's back, and it's good to see his car. NASCAR was going to clear him because, again, they made a really bad decision and a really bad call on that front. So overall, really excited to see that he's going to be back behind the wheel, and I hope that he can do a really good job behind the wheel. Hopefully it doesn't affect how he races. And now we're going to jump on to the next story of today's episode, as we're talking about short track rain tires. Now, someone asked a question to Bob Pockers in regards to that short track rain tire project that we talked about last year. And Bob Pockers responded and said that the project for the rain tires on short tracks basically is not a top priority at the moment. This does not surprise me, to be honest with you, that it is currently not a top priority at the moment right now, considering they got a lot of things they're focused on. Number one, they're looking at next year's schedule and what that schedule is going to look like going into next year. They're also focused on making sure this next-gen car is basically up to tech. Now, we'll talk a little about next-gen car here in regards to chassis here in just a second, but overall, it's not a major surprise to me that it's not a top priority right now as they're trying to focus on making sure this next-gen car continues to race really, really good and it doesn't have problems. I'm not surprised. I do think that, again, they tried this back in the 90s, and again, I do think that they will eventually get back to working on this project, but overall, I think currently at the moment, it's not a top priority at the current moment. And that's one thing I think that won't get updated. So overall, I think eventually they will get back on this project long term, but right now, I don't think that it is the #1 priority at the moment, to be honest with you. And now we're going to jump on to the next story of today's episode. As speaking of which, we're going to talk about next-gen chassis. Now, there was a rule change that was basically revealed that Bob Pockrass revealed yesterday, and he says that NASCAR has changed a rule that the teams could choose to replace a chassis after it was used as a primary for 3 races to be determined number of races. And the reason that they are doing this currently at the moment, according to what Bob says, is because of the situation of the number of cars in fleets. Now, we've not talked about this really recently on the channel, but there definitely is a major parts shortage in NASCAR right now. I don't know if it's better. It probably is a little better now than it was, but it's still something that is going on behind the scenes, is there still is a parts shortage problem. And I think that NASCAR is trying to be very, very smart here and prevent and make sure everyone can get on the track every single weekend. And I think that this is a good thing that NASCAR decided to do. Again, a lot of people are like, well, how is this a good thing that they are basically trying to stop this? Well, they're basically trying to make sure everyone can get back, and I'm glad to see that NASCAR decided to go ahead and make this change. Overall, I think it's a great decision, and I'm very excited to see NASCAR made this change because we want to make sure that cars can get on track each and every single week. So I think that's a major positive right there, and very good news, to be honest with you. And now we're going to jump on to the next story of today's episode, as we're talking about Jake Garcia. As it was announced on Wednesday that Jake Garcia is going to drive the 35 for Mick McAnally Hillman Racing in 2022 in the Truck Series for 5 races. His debut will come in a couple weeks at Martinsville. Then his next race will be at Worldwide Technology Raceway. Then a race at Indianapolis Raceway Park. Then a race at Richmond. And then his final race will be at Bristol Motor Speedway. Jay Garcia is a driver who's racing late models, of course, is driving in the ARCA West Series, and he's a 17-year-old driver who has a ton of talent and is, I believe, part of that McAnally Hillman Racing team in the ARCA West or the ARCA East Series. Jay Garcia is someone that I'm very intrigued to see what he's going to do in the Truck Series because, like I said, he's never made a Truck Series start, and he's a very young driver who is very, very aggressive. But he has competed for some major victories, including the Rattler 250 here very recently, and someone that knows how to get it done overall. So I'm very intrigued to see what he can do. Overall, my expectations is I'm not really going to have any high expectations for him just because he doesn't have as much experience. That being said, though, I think this is really, really awesome. Really, really cool. And I'm hoping to see that Jake Garcia can do very well here in 2022. And now we're going to jump on to the next story of today's episode as we're going to talk about some of the appeals. Now, a couple teams appealed their suspensions, the 31 team and the 38 teams. And unfortunately, the penalties have basically been upheld. They have lost their appeals, and they will basically, the penalties are upheld, and now they will all have to go through their suspensions. This is the thing about the appeals. I'm not entirely shocked. Now, the 31 team, I'm going to say this about them. The 38 team, they had a wheel come off. That team is probably going to get a penalty. But the 31 team had a really good case, and I guess NASCAR thinks, well, the whole wheel assembly came off. I really don't understand why the 31 team is getting a 4-race suspension here. I really don't understand. Now, both of these teams are going to accept the penalties, and they're going to start their suspensions, which, they're not going to appeal it. They're basically going to accept the penalties, and they're going to do it. The crew chief for I think Landon Castle is going to be the crew chief for Justin Haley, and I believe that, I don't remember who the crew chief is for the 38 that will be starting. I think it's a guy who already was starting crew chief to begin with, but both of these teams, that is really unfortunate that a 4-race suspension is a thing. Again, I understand why NASCAR is handing down the penalties, but at the same time, we'll get into why I have an issue with this. And overall, I think the 31 teams had a really good case. So overall, in my opinion, I don't agree with the decision, but they unfortunately lost their appeals. And again, it definitely is really, really frustrating that they would decide to go ahead and make these appeals go through, to be honest with you, and that they were not able to accept them. And now we're going to jump on to the next story of today's episode, as we'll talk about Ryan Sparks. As Ryan Sparks has been suspended for 4 races for the tire coming off, and Blaine Anderson and Alan Holman will also, the pit crew members of that team, will also be suspended as well. They are both part of the Hendrick crew team, basically backup crew members of Hendrick Motorsports. And Hendrick lost some of their backup crew members that they would need, but they have also been suspended as well. This is due to the tire coming off for the 7 car. Now, in my opinion, I don't think the full wheel assembly came off for the 7, so I really don't understand why they're getting a 4-race suspension. Now, they are not going to appeal that. I believe this Fire Motorsports is not going to appeal it. I think that they are going to go ahead and accept those penalties, and they are going to serve it. I'm not overall a big fan of 4-race suspension. I'll get to that here in just a little bit. But Ryan Sparks will be out for 4 weeks. It's definitely unfortunate. Ryan Sparks is a really, really good crew chief, and it was just an honest mistake that happened. And it really wasn't a loose lug nut either. Yes, some people say it maybe, but I don't really think it was a loose lug nut. So I really don't understand why NASCAR is suspending for 4 races. But overall, it is what it is in regards to that. And Ryan Sparks will be out of the crew chiefing role for a couple weeks. He will be back, I think, around Martinsville weekend, or will be back around the week after that, which I don't remember where it's after Martinsville. I think it's like maybe a Dakota or something. Dakota's next week. But they'll be back in a couple weeks, back behind the wheel as the crew chief. And now we're going to jump on to the next story of today's episode, as we're now jumping into what Corey LaJoie said on SiriusXM NASCAR Radio. And Corey LaJoie basically was saying on SiriusXM NASCAR Radio that he says that suspending a crew chief for a lost wheel is a rule that needs to be reevaluated. Now, like I've just mentioned, if you lose a wheel currently in the Cup Series right now, you get a 4-race suspension. Now, look, I'm going to get into this for a second. I know some people are probably going to disagree with me on this, and some are probably going to agree with me on this. I personally believe that a crew chief should not be suspended for 4 races, especially with the next gen car. Now, in the Xfinity Series and the Truck Series, they do have 5 lug nuts. If you can't get low 5 lug nuts tied, I think that's a major issue. But I do believe, especially with the new car right now, I think until it gets situated, there is no reason to be suspending these crew chiefs for any 2 crew members for 4 races. I think that is a little bit over the top. Now, that being said, as season progresses, NASCAR is going to fix this, and I think long-term, I do think the penalties are going to be justified. But in my opinion, I believe that it is a little bit excessive, at least for now. I do think maybe in the future, maybe that will change. But I think right now it is a little bit excessive to give out a 4-race suspension to crew chiefs. I don't think that's entirely fair on the crew chiefs right there, especially for rookie crew chief like Seth Barber. And some of these teams don't have true penalties. But we're not going to penalize RFK and Team Penske. Let's not penalize them, but let's penalize all these small team guys. Look, I understand what NASCAR is doing here. I totally get it, understand. Xfinity Truck Series, I get that penalty. But at the same time, I don't 100% understand why those teams are getting penalties, but some others are not. I think it's a little bit ridiculous, in my honest opinion. And now we're going to jump on to the next story of today's episode, as we are talking about Chase Briscoe and Mahindra. Now, there was a Q&A that Chase Briscoe did after winning the Cup Series race at Phoenix, picking up his first career victory. And Chase Briscoe was asked how was he able to pick up that Mahindra sponsorship for basically multiple years. He actually responded to this, and he actually says it came down to him and Brad Keselowski on the sponsorship if he was going to get Mahindra, and that they felt like he felt the mole better. The 14 team felt the mole better when it came to Mahindra. That's actually really interesting if Brad Keselowski almost got a full season sponsorship on their car with Mahindra. But they, again, like I said, they went ahead and chose Chase Briscoe. I think Chase Briscoe, I will agree with this, he's basically a grassroots racer who had to work his way up, who sat through couches, who basically was in ARCA shops, cleaning up shops, sweeping up floors, working his way up through the ranks. And one of the few and really in today's NASCAR, a lot of drivers are coming to scene. Yes, a lot of these guys do have talent, but you don't have a lot of those stories where drivers come in who are so talented. There's a few guys like Kyle Larson who really come to mind that are very similar to Chase Briscoe, and even Chris Bell comes to mind like these guys as well, who are sweeping up floors and stuff. And Mahindra really fits the mold of a guy like Tony Stewart and a guy like Chase Briscoe. So it's just crazy, though, that basically it almost came down to the fact that Mahindra nearly sponsored Brad Keselowski instead of Chase Briscoe. But overall, I think they made the right decision for Stewart-Haas Racing, and pretty cool to see that Chase Briscoe will have Mahindra, and it's cool to see that their anchor sponsor, they're going to be sponsoring for a majority of the season. And I think that's really, really awesome. That is such a crazy story, though, but I think that is really, really awesome, to be honest with you. And now we're going to jump on to the next story of today's episode, as we're going to talk about Team Penske and the Indy test. Now, David Land was at basically Indianapolis Motor Speedway, and he was basically handed off a tip, and he was at Indianapolis Motor Speedway, and he says that a Team Penske Xfinity Series car quietly tested on the Indianapolis F1 cars. He said, yes, the full backwards oval for turn number 1. It looks like maybe that they're going ahead. They had Connor Daly apparently in that car. Of course, this car is not really going to be hitting the majority of the season. They're expected to make a few starts in the NASCAR Xfinity Series this year. But they are basically, I think what they're doing here is that they are testing a different course. If you watched a NASCAR Cup Series race last year in Indianapolis Motor Speedway, you probably saw that there was basically multiple curves in where they used to do the Indy course. And those curves were getting broken up, and he had that big wreck where NASCAR made a really bad call, did not throw a caution, and they did not go and fix the curve. Instead, they basically ran over the curve. And I think what they're doing here is they're trying to test different configurations of what the track could look like. Because remember, we're going to be racing on Indy road course once again, and this is where we're definitely going to have to follow. But at the same time, I think what's so crazy is the fact that they are testing new configurations to kind of see what kind of tracks they'll run. I think it's pretty interesting, but overall, it's pretty cool that they're going out there and testing new types of configurations. I think it's very important for sport that you test that, and overall, great decision that they decided to go and test new configurations. And now we're going to jump on to the next story of today's episode, as we're talking about Matt Mills. As Matt Mills is going to be driving the 20 for Young's Motorsports this weekend here at Atlanta Motor Speedway. Originally, Matt Mills was supposed to be in the 20 car, but I guess because of how well he ran at Las Vegas a couple weeks ago, where he actually finished in the top 15 in a Young's Motorsports truck, which again is really, really impressive. They have decided to add another race for Matt Mills this season. So he'll be running a doubleheader, of course. He'll be driving a 5-car for Beach Club Motorsports this weekend in the NASCAR Xfinity Series, but he's getting another start here this weekend. I think that this is really, really awesome. Matt Mills, of course, a driver I think is very, very underrated. He's had some really strong runs, especially in the Truck Series and the Xfinity Series for Beach Club Motorsports, and of course, Young's Motorsports getting a top 15. Yes, a lot of really good cars got taken out, but he got a top 15 run regardless of how, it's not about how you start, it's about how you finish. And overall, I think he did really, really awesome and very exciting to see that Matt Mills will be back in the 20 for Young's Motorsports. I'm excited to see what he can do. Overall, I think a top 20 would be an amazing run for Young's Motorsports, but the fact they got a top 15 and a Young's Motorsports truck, and they seem to be a little bit better this year than they were last year. Really cool to see that Matt Mills is getting back behind the wheel at Atlanta Motor Speedway for Young's Motorsports. And now we're going to jump on to the next story of today's episode, as we're talking about Derek Griffith. As there have been some changes in regards to when his Xfinity Series debut is going to be for Sam Hunt Racing, as he'll actually now be making his Xfinity Series debut here in a couple weeks at Richmond Raceway in the 26 car. Now, originally Derek Griffith was supposed to be in the number 26. His debut was supposed to be at Martinsville a week after Richmond, but it looks like things have changed with Derek Griffith. Derek Griffith, I think, is a very, very talented driver who's getting a really good opportunity right here. I think he absolutely deserves it. And I think that's one thing about Sam Hunt Racing that I really enjoy, is they're giving really good and talented drivers really, really great opportunities right here. And I think this is a really good opportunity for Derek Griffith to get another start. Now, of course, he will make, I believe, 2 more starts this year in 2022. I think at Martinsville, and I think also at Dover, and I think another track later this year as well. So I think that's something that's really, really awesome. The fact that they're giving another start this season, I think that he will probably do a really, really good job. And I'm very, very excited to see what Derek Griffith can do here in a couple weeks. I think he'll do a really, really awesome job. And overall, I'm very excited to see him get back behind the wheel. And really awesome here to see him back behind the wheel early in the year. And now we're going to jump on to the next story of today's episode, as we're going to talk about another hauler situation. This is revolving around the number 98 team. Now, it was reported, I believe, by Alex Andrehev or Kelly Crandall, and she said that there's been a slight hauler hiccup for the number 98 hauler at Atlanta Motor Speedway. No issues, really major issues compared to the other issue we talked about with Steven Stotts, unfortunately, and the DGR hauler. Apparently, there was a hole in the fuel tank which caused a mess and was able to carry on. They had a back trailer, and they were able to carry on. It's good to see they're able to make it. They're probably now at Atlanta Motor Speedway. Of course, there's potential that practice could happen. However, rain is definitely in the forecast for Atlanta Motor Speedway. We'll get into that in just a little bit when it comes to the double yellow line rule, or the yellow line rule, or the line rule that they're having. But it's good to see that they're okay, no major issues right there, and the fact that there was nothing very, very seriously injured or no one was hurt, I think that's a major positive. We don't need any more situations like this, so it's good to see that the hauler was able to carry on and make its way over to the racetrack. I think that's a major thumbs up, and I'm happy to see that. And now we're going to jump on to the next story of today's episode as we are talking about Nico Hülkenberg. As it was announced yesterday that Nico Hülkenberg is going to be substituting for Sebastian Vettel at the Bahrain GP due to what's going on with Sebastian Vettel. This will be the first time that Sebastian Vettel is not in a Formula 1 car since 2007, so I don't think he's missed a race in nearly 15 or 16 years. Now, of course, Nico Hülkenberg is the reserve driver for Aston Martin, and I think Nico Hülkenberg is a very, very talented driver, and I'm very interested to see what he's going to do this weekend. Of course, we really don't know how the racing is going to be. We've seen practice, and there's a lot of crazy things in regards to FP1 practice, but we're not going to know what's going to happen until we get into the race and see how these cars traditionally race. Of course, like I said, like I mentioned, this is going to be the opening race for the F1 season here at Bahrain. It's unfortunate what happened. I'm wishing him speedy recovery for Sebastian Vettel, and really awesome that Nico Hülkenberg is going to be behind the wheel in an F1 car. I know there have been a lot of time maybe he was being considered for the Haas seat, but I think it's going to be cool to see that Nico Hülkenberg is getting back behind the wheel. I think he's a very, very talented driver. I think he'll do very, very well. Really excited to see what he can do here at Bahrain. And now we're going to jump on to the next story of today's episode as we're talking about Matt Kenseth. As it was officially confirmed that Matt Kenseth is going to be competing in the 2022 Slinger Nationals. Matt Kenseth has won a ton of Slinger Nationals, including very recently, about 2 or 3 years ago, in I believe 2019 or 2020, he was able to win the Slinger Nationals. Of course, a Wisconsin native. Matt Kenseth is also really, really great on short tracks throughout his career, whether it's in NASCAR or the late model scene. He was really, really good at short tracks. So it's not a major surprise that Matt Kenseth is showing up back at the Slinger Nationals. I think Matt Kenseth honestly has got a shot to win. Of course, Matt Kenseth is going to, of course, be competing in a couple SRX races. Of course, he's been up in the Fox booth. Maybe there's possibility he comes back in the Fox Sports booth in the near future. Who really knows? But I look at Matt Kenseth to definitely be a favorite to win the Slinger Nationals this year. I know there's a lot of guys like Ty Majeski are probably going to show up at the Slinger Nationals, but I do think that he will do very, very well. Very, very good. And like I said, I'm very excited to see that Matt Kenseth is getting back behind the wheel and he's going to be racing in the Slinger Nationals. I think he'll do really, really good. Very excited to see what he can do. And it's good to see that he'll be back and doing the Slinger Nationals. A really good thing, and awesome to see that he's back behind the wheel for the Slinger Nationals. And now we're going to jump on to the next story of today's episode as we're talking about Kyle Larson. Now, we do have a couple reports in regards to Kyle Larson to get in today, but the first report I want to talk about is from the next-gen test and a Goodyear tire test at Darlington. Now, there was a Goodyear tire test that happened at Darlington Raceway. Denny Hammond, Kevin Harvick, and Kyle Larson were at this test at Darlington. And Kyle Larson basically said during that test that he actually backed the car into the fence at the test, but he did say luckily that there was not a ton of damage on the car, and he was able to continue after another runs and was able to not have any other problems. But he did say that the racing he feels like is going to be really, really good. It's going to be fun racing. It's going to be a long endurance races at Darlington, but he says that he's really excited for it. It's crazy to think that a Cup Series champion, and this is not the first driver to have major problems getting back into wrecks. We've seen a lot of really great drivers who've had their cars snapped at good, were they really good, and last year were really, really great, and they have had their cars wreck and stuff. It doesn't matter how good you are. You've had multiple guys like Chase Elliott has had issues. I think Kevin Harvick spun out at Auto Club. But yeah, Kevin Harvick spun out at Auto Club. Kyle Busch has had major problems throughout the season. So overall, what Kyle Larson is saying is, I think that we're going to see a really exciting race at Darlington, by the way. And I think that he brings up a lot of good points here. That this car, of course, is much more difficult to drive. It's a much harder car to drive than normal. Of course, sometimes that is not a good thing when it's unpredictable. But overall, I think the fact it's more difficult to drive. And I think he's not really mad about it. He's just showing that, the car is much more difficult to drive. It's not a bad thing, by the way. It's just that it's really crazy to think that that a Cup Series champion had issues behind the wheel. But it is what it is. And again, he was able to continue and test it later. So no major problems right there. Just crazy that Kyle Larson backed his car into the outside wall at a test. And now we're going to jump on to the next story of today's episode, as we're going to talk about some wet weather racing updates for NASCAR. Now, there were a couple major changes that were announced in regards to wet weather racing a couple days ago. First is that it is now up to teams to use wet weather tires in NASCAR. And NASCAR declares the track wet during the road course events. There will be no more damp decoration prior to the race and no more mandates throughout the race, which means I don't know if this will mean that NASCAR will still throw a caution. I'm not entirely sure on that, if that means they will throw a caution or not. That's one thing that will be determined. But Another thing that was announced is that they are going to be requiring rain flaps on the cars. And for a lot of people that do not know what rain flaps are, this will be able to get rid of a lot of the mist. Last year, there was a lot of issues of visibility when we were at Circuit Americas. If you watched the Cup Series at Circuit Americas, you wanted something like rain flaps on the cars, and they were talking about maybe some major changes. Basically larger lights on the cars, on the back end so people could see. But these rain flaps, what they're going to do is they're basically going to get rid of a lot of the mist that has been coming off of these cars. So I think that's actually a really major positive right there. And also, I hope that this is not I think that what hopefully this means is that there's not going to be any more mandated cautions. That's one thing that I was not a big fan of is NASCAR declaring. Because you remember, especially at Daytona Road Course, NASCAR tried to mandate a caution for entertainment purposes, and no one came down and took wet weather tires. I think one person came down and took them, but everyone else basically stayed out, basically making it feel like NASCAR was trying to manipulate the outcome of the race right there. So I think that is a major, major positive right there. Then NASCAR has gone ahead and done this. I think this is really, really awesome. And again, I'm very, very pumped up. I'm very, very happy, to say it the least, that NASCAR has gone with this decision. I think this is a major, again, I think this is overall a positive decision for the sport overall as a whole. A great thing right here, and very exciting to see that they have gone ahead and done this. I think this is really, really awesome, really cool, and exciting to see that they've made a decision in regards to wet weather procedures. I think this is a great thing for the sport, to be honest with you. And now we're going to go ahead and jump on to the next story of today's episode, as we're talking about John Hunter Nemechek. As John Hunter Nemechek is going to drive the 18 car for Joe Gibbs Racing for 3 races in the NASCAR Xfinity Series. He'll race at Richmond, Dover, and Texas in October. He'll have different sponsors for all 3 races, but he'll make 3 starts in the 18 car this year. This has got me really pumped up and really excited. John Hunter Nemechek competed in multiple races in the NASCAR Xfinity Series last year in the 54 car, the All-Star car at the time, and he won at Texas Motor Speedway and was the fastest car in that event. Of course, John Hunter Nemechek competes full-time in the Truck Series for Kyle Busch Motorsports. He is still looking for his first win this season and looking for his first win since Pocono last year. But I think that he'll be very, very competitive in that event. I think John Hunter Nemechek in all seriousness can win these events. And we've seen how fast that car can be this year. Of course, the 18 car is the All-Star car. They've had multiple drivers get behind the wheel. Drew Dollar, Ryan Truex, and Trevor Bayne. Trevor Bayne being the most competitive so far and has been on the verge of winning races. Ryan Truex had a top 5 going before that happened. And then there's Drew Dollar, who's running all the Super Speedway races. Now, like I said, what are my expectations for Mr. John Hunter Nemechek? I think John Hunter is going to be a contender to win. He's been very fast in that car. I think that 18 car is going to show talent. I think he's going to give these guys a run for his money, guys like Noah Gragson and Ty Gibbs a run for his money, and guys like Josh Berry as well in these races. I think that John Hunter is a very underrated talent. He's a great driver, and I think that he will do overall a very solid and a really good job in that car. Like I said, I'm very excited to see that he's getting back behind the wheel. I think he's going to do a really awesome and a really great job, and I am very, very excited to see that John Hunter Nemechek will be back behind the wheel in the number 18 car for Joe Gibbs Racing in the NASCAR Xfinity Series. I think he's going to do a really good job in that car, to be honest with you. Now we're going to jump on to the first of 3 major stories in today's episode, as we're going to talk about the double line rule. This has been expected, and it's officially confirmed that there is going to be a double line rule for this weekend, but it's going to be a different color this weekend, as the apron being used at Atlanta is going to be a red-white rule instead of a double yellow line we see other super speedways. It's going to be a red-white rule. All racing and qualifying must be done above that line, and there also is going to be a choose rule as well. Now, that's very interesting that they decided to go with a choose rule, considering the fact that this race is supposed to be kind of like a super speedway, and it's basically like a super speedway, so I'm surprised that they're using a choose rule for that. Now, of course, it's like the double yellow line rule at other super speedway tracks. If you go below that, you're going to get penalized, and you have to go above that line. Now, of course, a lot of talk about qualifying currently at the moment, and that is probably going to get canceled in practice, probably going to take in place with that right now because of the situation with practice stuff and the fact that the track, because of rain forecast, probably is about to rain as we speak. There probably isn't going to be practice today, so they're probably going to cancel qualifying and give those team practice sessions. Now, of course, not a major surprise that they made this change. Again, I understand why people are not a big fan of it. They want people to go below that line, but they're trying to make it like a super speedway. Of course, they bring the super speedway package stuff going into this weekend. Now, One thing I want to say is I have no clue what this racing is going to be like this weekend. I think that this racing is probably going to be a shit show. The best case scenario for this weekend here, in my opinion, the best case scenario is we get 2001 Spring Atlanta race in 2001, where there's a couple packed together and we see a great battle for the win. That would be a great race, in my opinion. But the worst thing is it's a complete shit show, and there is a lot of messes that do happen in this race. I have a feeling it's going to be a train wreck and a half. I think there's going to be a lot of craziness and chaos in this race. And I do, like I said, I do think that there is going to be some chaos in this race. And Atlanta Motor Speedway is one of those races where you really don't know what entirely is going to happen here at Atlanta Motor Speedway. We really do not know what we are going to see this weekend here at Atlanta. And again, this is one, and we'll say Atlanta is the most hype it's been in many, many years, but I don't know what we are going to overall see this weekend at Atlanta Motor Speedway. I'm definitely one of those people that is kind of skeptical about it. I hope that what we see at Atlanta is really, really good and promising. I just hope it's not worse than Texas. I hope the racing's solid. But here's one thing I hope a lot of people coming this weekend hope. Just because I hope that people do not have bad opinions about the next-gen car and how it races if the racing isn't great, since Atlanta is such a different beast than what we've seen so far. I'm not going to have my opinions change on the next-gen car depending on the racing we see. If the racing's really, really good, that's a great thing. If the racing's awesome, it'll be great. But I'm honestly toward the side of I'm expecting this race to be very, very chaotic. Again, the worst case scenario is someone gets seriously hurt here, and it potentially could happen. You're basically making a super speedway high banking, 28 degrees of banking, which is basically only 2-3 degrees less than Daytona. And of course, they're bringing the super speed package well, but they are bringing the double yellow line rule this weekend. That's been expected. Well, the red line rule, red white rule. That's not exactly the rule. But overall, I think it's absolutely nuts and absolutely crazy that they are bringing a double line rule. I know a lot of people are not big fans of it, but it's not a major surprise that they decided to go ahead and bring those rules here to Atlanta Motor Speedway. And now we're going to jump on to the next major story of today's episode, as we're talking about Tyler Reddick. Now, there has been a lot of questions, and we usually don't hear much about free agency and stuff when it comes to Richard Childress Racing, and a lot of Cup contracts. We do keep those under wraps. Well, Richard Childress confirmed to Dustin Long and Jordan Bianchi a couple days ago on Tuesday afternoon that he says that Tyler Reddick is under contract to Richard Childress Racing for 2023 and will be in an RCR car next season, which means he is returning to Richard Childress Racing next season. I am very, very happy about this for many, many reasons, and there's a lot of reasons why I'm really, really pumped about it. Tyler Reddick has been absolutely killing it this season. He has been he's been really kicking butt this season behind that wheel. He is definitely, in my opinion, an underdog to make the championship for this year right now. And he's on the verge of winning races. If you looked at every single race we've seen so far from Tyler Reddick, and it isn't really a shock. If you even go back to last year and some of the races like Las Vegas, and he was extremely fast at the Charles Roble and could have beat Kyle Larson in that race. You go back to races like at Homestead in 2020 in his rookie year and where he's been. I think right now he's the best driver in the Cup Series that's not won a Cup Series race right now. And a driver that I think is the next driver, he or Ross Hussein are the two next guys that I think are potentially going to win. And like I said with Tyler Reddick, the guy knows what he's doing. Two-time NASCAR Xfinity Series champion, and probably had it not been for Cole Custer winning, of course, Cole Custer won the Rookie Year in 2020 because he won at Kentucky, but in all honesty, justifiably, it should have been Tyler Reddick winning the Rookie of the Year and not Cole Custer, but because of the way that the system works, if you win a race, you're ultimately going to win the Rookie of the Year unless you're Ryan Newman, because again, you should not be guaranteed the Rookie of the Year if you win one race and you make the playoffs. I think that's a little bit unfair, to be honest with you, but like I said with Tyler Reddick, I have been a big fan of Tyler Reddick's driving style. He has gotten praise from a lot of drivers in the NASCAR Cup Series. Austin Cindric won the 2020 NASCAR Xfinity Series Championship, who was on the verge of picking up a back-to-back championship last year, and of course, competing full-time in the Cup Series as a rookie this year, and probably will win the Rookie of the Year, and probably already won at this point, by the way, unless Harrison Burton and Todd Gilliland win, which is very, very possible, by the way, that they can go out there and still win. And then, of course, the defending Cup Series champion, Kyle Larson. And there's a lot of these guys in the Cup are expecting that he is going to be the driver that's going to break out this season. And do not be shocked if Tyler Reddick wins at least 2 or even 3 races this year. He's been super close to getting it done. He was very close to winning it here last week in Phoenix. And don't be shocked if he goes to victory lane this weekend. And I'll be honest, I'm going to be very pumped up and very excited. But like I said with Tyler Reddick, he deserves to come back to the scene. But the thing I'm very intrigued to see, because after 2023, there are going to be a lot of teams that are going to be available. But right now, Richard Childress Racing is really, really good right now. I think that they are at a good position right now in the Cup Series. My big question is, if Rich Childress Racing does remain competitive, does he come back to Rich Childress Racing after next year? Or does Ty Reddick go off to another team like maybe Hendrick Motorsports perhaps? There's a couple drivers' contracts will probably likely be up. Of course, Kyle Larson's ends, but most likely he's going to get extension at some point this year. Because, of course, he won a championship for Hendrick Motorsports last year. And then there's Alex Bowman, of course, who don't know what's going on at Ally. Do they keep their extension with Alex Bowman? I know that Alex once had a good time there, but do they keep him with him? Or does he remain and go like Stewart-Haas Racing? There's a possibility that he can be like a potential replacement for Kevin Harvick, perhaps. There's talk maybe 2024 that could be an open ride for him. That's a potential right there. But I think Tyler Reddick is going to be in RCR for a long time, and I think he has been really a big reason why Rich Childress Racing itself has been as good as they've been. So I hope that he returns to Rich Childress Racing in future long term as well. Again, I'm very happy to see he's coming back to the team. I think he deserves it. He's been really, really strong, and I'm very pumped up that Tyler Reddick is coming back to the team. He absolutely deserves it. He's been really doing great this year. I think he deserves it, and I'm very pumped to see that Tyler Reddick is getting back behind the wheel next year with Rich Childress Racing. He's done really good. He deserves a contract, in my honest opinion. And now we're going to go ahead and jump on to the final major story of today's episode, as we're talking about Kyle Larson and the potential of him going to the 24 Hours of Le Mans in 2023. Now, we talked about this big announcement on the channel yesterday about Hendrick Motorsports and NASCAR teaming up to bring a next-gen car, a NASCAR car, to the 24 Hours of Le Mans. This will be the first time that NASCAR has entered the 24 Hours of Le Mans, had a car enter the 24 Hours of Le Mans since the year 1976. And historically, a NASCAR car has never finished the 24 Hours of Le Mans. The goal for Hendrick Motorsports and that team is to finish 24 Hours of Le Mans. Chad Canales is going to oversee that operation here. And a big question that was asked and wondering is who is going to be the driver lineup. And there are a lot of drivers that definitely could be up for grabs. You have guys like Jimmy Johnson and Jeff Gordon who could be available to get in the car. You also have a lot of guys like Kamui Kobayashi could be available. But one thing that Rick Hendrick did say is that he'd like to have an active Cup Series driver be run the car. And also Steve Phelps said that they would have to work on scheduling and stuff. Now, I think usually the 24 Hours of Le Mans is during the Father's Day weekend, and this year Father's Day weekend is when NASCAR is also. It's very, very possible right there. Now, one driver a lot of people like to see is Kyle Larson. Kyle Larson seems to be very, very interested, and he basically said, need a driver? He basically is insinuating that he would like to run the 24 Hours of Le Mans. Now, let's talk about Kyle Larson, why I think he would be a great driver to choose over that. Look at the caliber of Kyle Larson. There's a lot of time maybe he could run the Indianapolis 500 next year for like Team Penske or another organization in 2023. He wants to run the Indianapolis 500. And I think you look at Kyle Larson, yes, of course he's known for being a really awesome dirt racer. He's got 25 career World of Outlaws victories. He's won the Knoxville Nationals. He's won the Kings Royal last year, won 10 Cup Series races and a Cup Series championship. And a lot of people ask, can Kyle Larson get it done in road racing? Yes, he can. In fact, Kyle Larson actually won the 2015 Rush 24 with Chip Ganassi Racing. He had Jamie McMurray as a teammate, Scott Dixon, and Tony Kanaan as teammates in that event. And a lot of people thought that he was getting carried, but no, Kyle Larson kept his own and was really, really fast. And I think he's one of the most talented drivers in North America. Now, of course, Kyle Larson would not probably be competing overall for the victory if he ran the Le Mans 24 Hours. He wouldn't be competing for the overall victory because, remember, it's a special Garage 56 entry, so it's going to be in its own class. But it's for innovation and stuff, and they're going to probably make a lot of changes in regards to the hybrid system on that car and whatnot. Like I said, Kyle Larson knows how to get it done. And I think he'd be able to be very, very competitive behind the wheel in a 24 Hours of Le Mans race. And I think that's one race. Of course, we know Hendrick Motorsports is going to be there. I think if you're going to have a core lineup, for me, my core lineup of drivers I like to see behind the wheel, I'd like to see Kyle Larson and Chase Elliott if they can get both those guys out there, if they can get more than one guy. Jimmy Johnson, and if they can't get Jeff Gordon, there's a couple drivers they could choose. One is Kamui Kobayashi. Kamui Kobayashi knows how to get it done. The guy, I think, is one of the best drivers in the world and one of the most underrated drivers in the world. He would absolutely be a really, really good choice for the Hendrick entry. And then, of course, you have other guys that could be very available for that. But overall, I'd like to see Kyle Larson get in there and be a driver being considered. I think a younger driver who knows how to get it done, who is a Cup Series champion, who could this year go back-to-back, by the way, I may be jinxing him already, but a driver that could absolutely go back-to-back this year. Overall, I'm very pumped up and very excited to see what this happens. And again, I really hope that Kyle Larson does get behind the wheel of its car in the 24 Hours of Le Mans. I think it would be really awesome to have him over. He seems very interested, and I think we're going to see some NASCAR presence next year. Now, of course, like I mentioned, NASCAR has to change the schedule and stuff, but if it is around the Father's Day weekend like it was this year, and we schedule it then, There is a very big possibility. I don't remember exactly when the date is for the 24 Hours of Le Mans. I think NASCAR, if they're smart and they play their cards right, they have the 1 week break that they had this year, have it on the weekend of the 24 Hours of Le Mans. That's when you have the 1 week break. I think it makes a ton of sense, and I do hope that we can see Kyle Larson and other NASCAR drivers compete in the 24 Hours of Le Mans in 2023. Now, of course, Kyle Larson will have to do a lot of training and stuff for that, but I think he knows how to get it done, in my opinion. So, anyway, that's today's long NASCAR and Motorsports video. I want to thank you guys for watching. Please subscribe to the channel, notification on to be notified when a video that goes live on my channel. Follow me on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram, and support me on page as well. Let's get over that and comment your thoughts on today's video. Do you think that Kyle Larson should enter the 2023 24 Hours of Le Mans or not? Let me know in the comments below. And what are your thoughts about Tyler Reddick getting extended with Childress Racing for 2023? Let me know in the comments below. We got a lot of exciting stuff coming up here. We got, of course, a very big weekend of racing. Of course, the 1,000-mile Sebring Race, the World Endurance Championship is currently going on. We've got the 12 Hours Sebring. We've also got IndyCar, Cup, and Xfinity Series, and all the racing this weekend. Got a big weekend of racing that y'all, I hope, will enjoy. We've got a couple major videos that are coming out here very, very soon. You may see an F1 race review, but I'm probably not going to because there's going to be 3 straight races of racing this weekend. So anyway, like I said, I want to thank you guys for watching today's video, and I'll see you guys next time for some great, awesome NASCAR and other motorsports content all on the channel like this. Take care, everybody.